Okay, we got a great show for you today, the Legacy Blueprint podcast. Happy to welcome Andy Cagnetta today to the show. Andy's got a wealth of experience. As you guys know, we're famous for bringing people on that have a great background and have built a lot for themselves. And I think one of the great takeaways, we always talk about building business. One of the things I think we're going to talk about today, which I think we're going to love hearing about, is the exit, right? One of my good friends, Judge Graham, wrote a book called Scale with Speed, and he talks about always have the end in mind, focus on what it is you want to do and figure it out so that you can grow and build to that point. And I think far too few people think that way, Andy, but obviously that's something that you're accustomed to and something that you teach and that you do on a daily basis. So I'd love to dive deeper into that. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks. We always tell people you have two ways to leave your business. You could walk out or you could go out toes first. So you want to be able to walk out with your head held high and, hopefully profit. I mean, and enjoy either retirement or the next thing. I mean, you shouldn't be stuck on one thing if you're not enjoying yourself. So.
Yeah, I love it. So let's just talk about it. Let's just get right into it. And one of the topics you have on here is negotiating for the best price for your business. There's got to be some steps and step-by-step plans. I haven't personally sold any of my businesses, but I'm in that process now of trying to set up for it now that I've kind of learned the hard way and I've exited a few businesses by just kind of walking away from them and learned that I probably could have sold them. And now I'm building businesses that are sellable. So, what does that look like? What should people be thinking about maybe 5 years, 10 years in advance of a sale?
Well, I have 12 steps to increasing the value of your business. And 3 of the steps is basically keeping good books and records. So number one is, have a CPA that you trust and that you have a good relationship with. Number 2 is have a computer system that is maintaining your books and your records and your AR and your inventory and your payables, and it's up to date constantly. And, number 3, just try not to, rig the books to just save on taxes. I mean, there are things that you can do to try to save on taxes that are not as bad as, some other things that, like hiding revenues is bad, and playing with your inventory levels at the end of the year is bad, because those are things that are very difficult to unwind eventually. So having good books and records, number 1, is kind of the 101. And then, if we have 3 years, and we would love 3 years, because the magic number is 3 years, because if you're going to get an SBA loan, if the buyer is going to finance the purchase of the business, the SBA is going to look back 3 years. The banks are going to want to know that you are profitable, that, again, you have good books and records, the business is solid. So you want those years to be increasing. So if we have 3-year run rate and we're looking out and we're going to say, by 2025, I'm going to be done. I want to sell. And we've had businesses come to us, we had a business come to us 6 years ago that wanted to sell for 15 million. And we said, you're not worth 15 million. And they said, well, what do we need to do to get there? And we told them, and we sat with them once a year. And, 5 years into that process, we were like, you're ready to go. And so we put it up for sale and sold it. So.
See, I think that's an important takeaway as well for a lot of business owners. I think part 1 is recognizing that you can sell and actually creating a strategy around it. I think part 2 would be realizing that there are folks like you that you could sit down and create strategy with, right? And understanding that there are, professionals that help, create business sales and create opportunities for exit. So
we're the best kept secret out there. Right? Even I sold my business. I had a business up in Hartford, Connecticut. It was a small pasta shop with my family. It was kind of one of my first businesses, and we bought it and we sold it. And it was a small little business, but I didn't even know a business broker existed to help me do that. And the other businesses I had over the years, small little businesses, again, I never sold. I didn't know that was an option. So like you said, just even knowing that you can do that. And number 2, that there are people out there that can help you do this is sometimes groundbreaking for business owners.
I love it.
We've walked into a couple of places every once in a while. We've walked into a couple of places where there's a going out of business sign, and we walk in, we're like, what's wrong? Why are you going out of business? Like, I don't know. What else do you do? It's like, you're making a few $100,000 a year. How about we sell it for, $700, $800,000?
Yeah.
And we've taken down a couple of those signs a couple of times. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's super interesting. It's super important for people to recognize, again, like, I feel like I see people do this all the time. They walk away. I did it. I walked away from something because I was trying to build something bigger. And in hindsight, the opportunity was probably there to sell it off. So I think that it's a very interesting concept you're talking about. And you probably come across it more often than most of us because of the way that, you're in that space. But let's talk about actual valuation, like meat and potatoes of this piece for a second, right? Like when you're looking at a business, we all know good books, good CPA. Well, I shouldn't say we all know, because I think a lot of people probably do, take advantage of those tax strategies in the wrong way, and it affects their outcome, right? So that was some great knowledge. But let's talk about the actual evaluation of the business and what people should be looking for if they're going to have their business evaluated.
yeah. So what they're looking for, again, is a buyer is going to pay for what they're going to make in the future. The simple man's way of figuring that out is kind of look to see what they made in the past and see if it's consistent, or if there's a line going up or a line going down. And they're going to draw that line into the future. Then they're going to take a multiple of that, or a present value of that. And the easy way to do that is just use a multiple. And the multiples can vary. And as I always say, the quality and quantity of earnings drive multiples. So the quantity, if a business makes $25,000, it's probably not worth 5 times that. It's probably worth maybe 1 times that, if worth anything, because something that makes 25 grand is like a hobby, right? So
Mm-hmm.
something that makes $1 million is probably worth 5 times, maybe even 6 times. We were just talking, I got here a little bit late. We were talking to a technology company, probably could push 6, 7 times, and it's, making almost $1.5 million. So as the quality and quantity of the earnings grow, does the valuation. Now, what's the quality of earnings? Well, the quality of earnings is back to, do you have good books and records? Do you have a diverse customer base, or do you have a customer concentration issue where you have one customer with no contract that's cancelable within 30 days? Do you have a business that has good employees, or you are the chief cook and bottle washer, and without you, the whole thing's going to fall apart? So all those things are the quality of earnings. What's the chances of that earnings continuing on without the owner and with a new owner?
I love that fact that you just mentioned, because I do a lot of coaching to peak performers and executive leadership. And one of the things is always, for small business owners that are making good money, that have that fear of letting go, or like letting go of the vine, or training someone else, or allowing them to take some responsibility. This is where the rubber meets the road, right, Andy? Because if you're not willing to like let go and train, and I always say, what happens if you get hit by a bus, right? Do your people stop eating? Is there still a business? If you went on vacation for 2 months, would it function? Would it flourish? Would it fail? Right. And so what you're saying is, like, this business has to be a business that somebody else can buy, and not just replace their job and have to go take over where you left off, right? You have to have a functioning business where people can continue doing it without you if you're not there anymore. And that's important to a sale.
Yeah, it's not horrible for a somebody to buy the business and have to work. I mean, that's usually the case. But for someone to come in and be the chief cook and bottle washer, work 60 hours, do everything, we've all read, hopefully, the E-Myth, that you want to, create a business that can function without you. That's a great question. We always tell buyers, it's a good question to ask. When was the last time you took a vacation? How long were you gone? And if the owner answers, oh, I take a vacation every year for 2 weeks during the summer and 2 weeks at the end of the year, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
That means their business is solid enough that they can walk away from it, or they can leave during the day and go to a kid's soccer game, or, that's the kind of thing. Business buyers go to a business and they're going to see themselves in that seat. And I tell people all the time, even clean up your office. Don't make it look so hectic. Clean up the bathroom, because we actually had a bathroom that, it looked like a toxic waste dump. And, a business buyer once upon a time said, I love the business, I can't work there. Because if that's where I have to go to the bathroom every day,
That's
you
it.
know,
It's a deal breaker.
so, yeah, I mean, so yeah, that's, there's a lot of things that go into, eventually selling a business. And then the process itself, you asked earlier about negotiating for a deal, some of the really important things of getting a good buyer, right? Sellers, we want to do good deals for good people. So we want the sellers to be happy, they get good money. We want buyers buying good value and being able to make their money back plus a return. And how do we do that? Well, we create competition for a deal. You want it, we always say that if you have one buyer, you don't have a buyer, the buyer has you.
Mhm.
Because things get retraded in the middle of deals, and so you want several buyers to choose from. You want several offers to choose from. You want to be able to negotiate. You want to have someone else to be able to negotiate back and forth, so you can maintain your relationship. Have someone like us be the bad guy and go back and forth and be able to get a good deal for you, because that's really what it takes to get a good deal at a good price with the right terms. And like you said, if they don't even know that they can sell their business, they certainly don't know what's usual in a deal. And even they could blow their own deal by asking for something that's just not usual and
Yeah.
not customary. And that's what we hate to see. We hate to see good deals that could have gotten done for people. People could have retired. Buyers could have had a great business, not get done.
So I'm going to flip it on you. I know you represent sellers of businesses. I'm sure you also help people buy businesses as well, right?
Yes,
So on the
absolutely.
negotiation side, let's just say I'm a passive investor and I have money I want to go invest in. I don't want to work that process. I want to buy a cash flowing business that's already operating, and I want to just have a certain ROI on my money. What's the best thing? What should I be looking for? What are the key indicators of a good business or a good practice that I should be looking at?
Well, listen, you want to look at, so private equity, right? So private equity doesn't buy businesses that make less than, say, $1 million to $2 million for a reason, right? They do that because when the owner leaves, they're expecting things to kind of go down a little bit, and they're expecting for their management team, because listen, if you're not going to work the business, somebody has to. So the first thing you need is someone you can trust. And a lot of times, it could be a brother, it could be a friend, it could be someone that you trust that wants to run a business, that needs a job. There's nothing wrong with investing in a company for them and having them run it. Now, you're going to want to look at their talents and see what business fits them. But let's say you find the business that fits them, you're going to want to see that there's enough money being made to not only pay that person to run the company, but then have a return for you. So, private equity doesn't like to do $2 million less. Why? Because if something bad happens, and you say lose $500,000 the first year, you're okay. I mean, you made $1.5 million instead of two.
Sure.
If you buy a business that made $200,000 and there's a $500,000 problem, you could be out of business. So,
Sure.
the inherent risk on smaller businesses is more, but that's an opportunity for people who want to work in a business, or young people. I can't believe that there's not more young people that graduate from college. They spend $250,000 or more on going to college, and then they're afraid to invest in a small business and maybe, go out there and learn something. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think more
It's
kids could
incredible.
do that.
Well, that's a whole separate debate. We could talk about how college doesn't prepare our kids to go out and become entrepreneurs, and that's a whole different animal. But that's something else we could talk about. But okay, but let's talk about the negotiation piece now. So I find a I say property. I'm a real estate investor. You can tell, right?
Yeah,
I
sure.
find a business. I want to acquire it. What are the angles I should be looking for? Am I looking for seller financing? Am I looking for money down? Am I looking for least amount of cash out of pocket? Am I looking for best cash flow? Like, what are the key indicators of a great deal?
Yeah. Yes. 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 Right. So the deal needs to pencil eventually. Right. So the down payment should be, if you can get an SBA loan, the SBA is a great option right now, because the SBA loans are 10% down over 5 to 10 years. Interest rates are historic lows. And right now, if you close the deal before September, you're going to get 3 free months from the SBA. They're going to actually pay your principal and interest. That's just about done. By you can't quite get a deal closed between now and then. So,
Sure.
so So the other thing is if you have, and yes, you want seller financing, even if there's a loan from a bank, you want the seller to be on the hook because you want the seller to be interested in your success. So a lot of businesses with seller financing only, say you buy a business that you can't qualify for the loan because maybe you have credit issues or maybe you don't have industry experience, you're going into something new. A lot of sellers will finance the deal if they believe you're the right buyer, and it's usually about half down. So say you're buying a business for $500,000. Say you're buying it for 2.5 times. So it's a $200,000 cash flow. You could probably buy it for about two to $300,000 down, the rest over, say, 5 years. And you buy it, and that keeps the seller really interested. Um, there's not a ton of businesses that sell for cash, and there's all the sellers out there in the world. Well, I'm only going to sell for cash and 100% cash. And it's like, well, you're probably not going to sell because that's not the marketplace.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because I think it's a big misnomer. I think a lot of people think I'm going to sell for, I'm going to sell my business for $2 million and I'm just going to like throw $2 million in my checking account and I'm going to go on with life. And that's just really not how it's built. That's not how it's done. And a lot of these are seller finance deals in some way, shape, or form, right? But the sellers, let's face it, the sellers they're making interest. It's a passive income supply for them, and they're generally either walking away or they're getting some sort of salary to stay on board for a year or two, right?
Yeah, and there could be some tax benefits to that, and depending on what happens with capital gains. You might want an installment note to, work on the capital gains taxes moving forward, but that's a whole nother story for another day, and we'll see what happens with capital gains moving forward. So yes, an owner note, you can pay 4 to 6% these days. You're not getting 4 to 6% anywhere else. When we go to, and you talked about how do I get a good deal, right? So again, you look at a business broker and say, oh, the business broker is just getting paid by the seller. They want the biggest commission. At the end of the day, we want to get a deal done and we want to help people get a deal done. We're not going to make any money unless we get a deal done. So a lot of times what we're trying to do to the seller is educate them their marketplace. And usually that includes us bringing them down from the price of their Montana uh, cabin that they want to buy down to what the marketplace is actually paying. And then educating buyers that right now, it is a seller's market. Sellers are getting top dollar. There's tons of buyers out there. If somebody comes to me with a laundry list of what they want in a business, I want passive income, I want recurring revenues, I want someone who's retiring, I want someone with a historical cash flow. And I'm like, yeah, me too. I mean, like if you want something that's gets an A on its report card all the way across all its subjects of a business, you're not going to find the business. So you're going to have to, as a buyer, be aggressive. You're going to have to pay a fair price or even more than a fair price. And you're going to have to, work with the sellers to get deals done.
Love that. Love that. What kind of tricks and tips did I forget to ask you about that we missed today?
Listen, there's all kinds of things in negotiations that I like that you can use in your everyday life. There's a couple of things. My favorite one is the flinch, right? So when somebody gives you a value proposition, you just give them a little flinch, like, "Ooh, I can't believe that's so expensive." And a lot of people are empathetic, unless they're sociopaths, and they're going to want to ease your pain. And if you just do that little flinch, I've used it before. I had someone give me a proposal for $25,000 and I did one of these. My wife was sitting next to me and he said, well, that's in the big city, but up here we'll do it for 10. And she's like, he just moved $15,000 with that little flinch. So, but there's things like extreme anchors you can use is like, well, and that could be, and people say, well, I don't want a low ball. And well, there's nothing wrong with a low ball. You just don't know, you got to make offers. Like if you're going to buy a business, one of my points is don't be afraid to make an offer. Don't be afraid to make a low offer. The broker can tell you whether or not it's going to fly. And you say, listen, I don't know how much you want to sell for. I'm willing to pay you this. So there's nothing wrong with, and then the next offer, if it gets closer, won't be as shocking. People ask me sometimes just kiddingly, like, how much is your fee? And I say, well, it's 50% upfront. And people are like, that's ridiculous. And it's like, yeah, it is ridiculous. But when I tell them what my fee is, it sounds a lot more reasonable after the 50% extreme anchor we threw out there. One of my
Yeah.
favorite books, just as a tip to everybody, if you're going to read a negotiation book, Chris Voss,
Chris Voss.
Split the Difference. One of my favorites.
It's so funny. I'm sitting here listening to you, Andy, and it's almost like we know each other. I've been teaching the flinch and the extreme anchor in my wholesale company for 5 years. And then it's just, we do it every time. We make a seller an offer, and then they come back with a number, and we're going, oh, is that the best you can do?
You know, the funny thing is about both those things is that even if you know they're coming, and even if you know what they are, they still work against you.
They still work. They still work.
You know, when people do it to me, it still works. And so, because it's
psychological.
It's psychological.
Yeah. It's innate in us to want it's empathetic. We want to fix it. Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Right. And sometimes,
perfect.
listen, and sometimes, you know, in negotiations as well, and Chris Voss talks about this a lot, it's not money all the time. No. So I don't want to scare people that you shouldn't try to go out there and buy business, because a lot of times what happens is the right buyer walks through the door, meets with the seller. The seller is so engaged, sees that young person, reminds them of them when they were a young person. They have the right skill set, and they walk out the door, and the seller who had the price up here, all 100% cash, looks at me square in the eye and says, do whatever you can. I want to get that young person into my business. And they'll make all kinds of considerations for that person: seller financing, earn out, stick around to mentor them. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone to take their baby to, in the future. A lot of times when people go to sell their business, they're not looking just for the money. They already made their money. Selling your business just for money is not usually the reason why people sell, unless you have a technology company and you're cashing in multi-millions of dollars. Yeah. When you're selling a mom and pop business, you're getting 2 times, 3 times. And people say, well, I'll just stick around for 2 years or 3 years. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Stick around for 2, 3 years. Call me in 2, 3 years. And they're like, no, I don't want to. I want to retire. I want to travel the world. I'm sick. I'm getting a divorce. I'm burnt out. And so it's not usually about money.
Yeah. Preach it, brother. It's so similar to the real estate world. I tell folks all the time, the money is generally not the issue. It's figuring out what the real problem is and solving it, right? Creating a solution for that person, whether it's a peace of mind, or whether it's a, relocation, or whether it's they're going to use it to pay off something and make themselves feel better, or maybe they're going to buy themselves a new car, or, whatever it is. Like, it's really that thing. It's the end result that they're looking for. It's not necessarily the cash or the value. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's project management, right? We're in the right. Yeah. People come to us and they know what they want. They want to buy it. When I went to buy the house that I've been in for 20 years now, my wife calls me and says, this is the house we're buying. We have to buy this house. She calls me on my cell phone, and I'm like, are you happy to be standing in front of the seller and the realtor as you're saying this? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, well, I guess we're playing.
There goes that
price.
There goes that.
There goes that negotiation.
Love it. Oh, man. Well, Andy, you brought tons of value today. I think that a lot of these things, as I say a lot of times, guys, re-listen to this whole podcast, especially if you're a business owner. You absolutely have to pay attention to what the exit looks like, right? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it you're trying to build? And what is it you want to do with it when you're done? Yep. Because at some point in time, as you said at the beginning, we're either going out feet first or walking out, right? Is that what you said at the beginning?
Yeah, that's what I did say.
So, hey, Andy, how can our listeners get a hold of you? And you have anything coming up or any?
Yeah, I always like to tell people about our podcast. We have a podcast too. It's called the Deal Board Podcast. If you want to learn more about buying and selling businesses, you could go to tworld.com. That's our website. I'm all over social media. Happy to talk to you via LinkedIn. Just look me up, Andy Cagnetta. I'm one of the only Andy Cagnettas out there in the world, other than my dad, and he's not on LinkedIn. So it's
awesome.
It's all good. That's the nice thing about having a unique Italian last name, right?
That's right. I get it. I'm telling you, there's about 10 evangelistes I've ever met in my entire life. So I'm with you, brother.
Yes.
All right. Well, Andy Cagnetta, thanks for being on the show, brother. You brought the heat today, and I think the listeners are going to get a lot out of it. So I hope they follow up with you and make sure they listen to the Deal Board podcast as well. So have a great day. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.